Hello, everyone. How are you today? My name is Jim Pikarski, and I give Dharma talks and teach meditation at Blue Lotus Meditation Center here in Venice, Florida. And today I would like to talk about deepening our insight. Insight is fundamental. Insight changes our world for us. And in Buddhism, insight is absolutely necessary. We need to see who we are and what life is all about. Um, so, in the Buddhist path, the path is really a blend of practice and teachings. So, we have meditation and insight, and we need to be able to bring those things together. Meditation gives us experience, and insight helps us understand that experience. Um, so, one of the things that we practice is inquiry. This is one of the basic practices, and a lot of people tend to be drawn to this particular type of practice, spiritual practice. A lot of people are into Buddhism because Buddhism has a lot of inquiry in it. People into Advaita Vedanta, where inquiry is central. So inquiry really means in all these paths, we take something of our true nature, and we take that quality of our true nature and we try to become more in line with it. So in inquiry, we're really taking the wisdom of our true nature and we're really trying to align ourselves with that wisdom. We align ourselves with that wisdom by really practicing inquiry and looking into things in a deep manner. And by looking into things in a deep manner, our wisdom blossoms. There are other paths too. There's the path of, in Buddhism, it's called metta or loving kindness. Devotion is another aspect of this. What we're really doing with these paths is we're taking the loving nature of our true nature and really making that central to our practice. We're trying to bring it forth. We're trying to align our minds with the naturalness of our true nature, the loving qualities of our true nature. So this includes longing for God. It includes all these emotional feelings that we feel that are spiritual. And this certainly is caring and loving others. And when you really practice metta or loving kindness, you're really overcoming selfishness and separation. So we really all want to feel whole, we want to feel connected. And by practicing loving kindness and, we long for something that is whole. And this is bringing forth that aspect of our true nature to the surface. Another set of qualities of our true nature is peace. And one way to get in touch with this peace is to practice meditation. When we practice meditation, we experience peace, and we also experience the spacious nature of our true nature. So practicing meditation and similar types of practices really helps us overcome stress, overcome stressful thoughts, and really gives us a sense of that peace. There's also the practice of awareness in general. One quality of our true nature is awareness. It is, identifying awareness is extremely important because awareness is something, compared to the other things, it's always with us. Because it's always with us, we don't even really have to practice it. We just have to realize it. We just have to see that it's there. We can also use awareness as a practice with the other paths also. So just practicing awareness means being present throughout the day. Now, you can't be present all the time because our minds are unruly, but we can take specific periods of time and practice presence, maybe just for a few moments. But that practice helps us, our psyche, and our mind to align with that quality of our true nature. So I'm going to talk more about insight today and inquiry. In insight without meditation is kind of dry and superficial. We really need experience. It's hard to get deep insight. If you haven't had experiences of the peace that you experience when you meditate, it's very difficult to not get into thinking that peace is something that comes from the outside. Meditation without insight can be just as limited, because meditation can give you a sense of peace, and yet you may not understand that this peace is actually who you are. You may not have insight into your true nature. So we try to bring all these different paths, all these different qualities, and all these different practices together because they all potentiate each other. So we practice awareness, we practice metta, loving kindness, we practice inquiry, and we practice meditation. So a lot of times during the day, you can practice any of these things. There's so much wasted time that we're just thinking about something that we've thought about a million times. And we can take those times to practice. So when we practice meditation, meditation can be really helpful in inquiry, because when we practice meditation, what we do is we quiet our minds. When we quiet our minds, it's possible to put aside our preconceived notions. And when we put aside our preconceived notions, we may be able to see reality directly and not see it through the lens of our conditioning. So when we meditate, a lot of times our minds get quiet, and this makes it easy for us to do this. Devotion and love quiet the mind also. So if you've ever been full of devotion or full of love, you may feel a sense of spaciousness and a sense of quiet. And these are characteristics of meditation also. But even just meditating, just by itself, can lead to insight. I mean, one of the basic insights you get from meditation, and this is people who are just meditating just to feel relaxed, is not only does it relax you, but there is a deep peace that is inherent in us that we can experience through meditation. A lot of times this is mind-blowing for a lot of people because they're always seeking outside of themselves. Interestingly, if your insight goes deep enough, a lot of times that can lead to a quiet mind. It can lead to concentration. Because if your insight goes deep enough, what happens is that you're no longer enamored with all the thinking that goes on in your mind. You can just see it as static, and because it's just static, you're no longer paying attention to it. Because you're no longer paying attention to it, your mind can be mostly silent. A lot of people who have some depth of realization, their minds have become quite silent. So in Buddhism, samsara, or delusion, blocks our vision. So samsara, or delusion, is basically just accepting our conditioning. We live in an interesting reality here because it's almost like we have to learn all these things to be able to function. And yet just about everything we learn that is helpful on a functional level also conditions us. So even, your body in space, and, all of a sudden you start feeling separate from everything else because that's how you see it, and it's functional to see it that way. And yet on a deep emotional level, it really creates suffering for ourselves. So what we want to do is we want to be able to deepen our understanding so that we can break through our conditioning. And this is usually a process. So when we're really practicing inquiry or insight, there's usually stages of this. And the first stage is just hearing or intellectual understanding. Sometimes it's reading, just reading something, and that's interesting. We understand what's being said intellectually. It sounds true. And it may be believed superficially. or it seems logical to us. All these things, it's better to have a right idea than a wrong idea, even if it's only intellectually held. But it can't really take us too far. So sometimes you get people who are at this level and they talk about spirituality and it just seems like talk. You know, they're talking about what they read or whatever. Um, they think they know, or we think we know because we have intellectual understanding. Um, so this thinking that we know because we have intellectual understanding can be harmful because what it stops further inquiry. When we think we know, we stop inquiring deeper. The best thing to know, and a lot of Zen people talk about this, is to having a don't know mind. A don't know mind means that you don't really hold on to anything. You're constantly looking at life freshly. So when we understand something intellectually, it's not unusual for our egos to get involved and our egos to kind of want to take it over. Take it over by, oh, I know this. Um, so we need to deepen our intellectual understanding. And one of the ways to deepen our intellectual understanding is to really get experience. So when we get experience, we actually see something in operation. We verify that it is true. Um, so we verified it's true. Now it's no longer just intellectual understanding. We've seen it. We've seen it in our lives. Because we've seen it in our lives, it's a deeper understanding. However, this understanding can come and go still because our experiences can come and go. So it's not unusual for a person who has just the level of experiential understanding to just have it temporarily and then come back to it. They may say, oh, yeah, I knew that. I knew that because I've experienced that before. So experience needs to deepen and be more continuous. And once experience, so we have intellectual understanding, experience, and the next thing is realization. Realization is being convinced on the deepest levels. Um, and it's through our experiences and through our intellectual understanding, but it's through our inquiry and our contemplation. We become convinced on this level. So it's like a permanent understanding. Permanent in this sense is that you understand that water is wet. You are absolutely convinced of this. Nobody could shake this conviction. This is something you've experienced, I don't know how many times in a lifetime, but thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So when we get to the level of realization, it goes deeper than just the intellect. It goes into a level of kind of an aha moment. We almost feel like your emotions and your body is involved. So intellectual understanding, experience, and then realization. So when we're contemplating, we can contemplate and either broaden our understanding. We broaden our understanding by seeing it in different situations, seeing it many, many times until you are convinced. But we can also deepen it. Sometimes people see things so deeply and so clearly that it's convincing right off the bat. They don't really have to see it again. I mean, they will see it again, but they don't have to see it again to know. When I was a little kid, my parents told me not to touch the stove. We had an electric stove, but I liked the glow of the burners. So one time I touched the burner. I touched the burner and got a big blister on my finger. And then I was convinced. Okay, I understood the pain of touching an electric burner so deeply that I was fully convinced, and I never touched one again. Um, so you can extend your insight through breath, or you can deepen it, and hopefully we can do them both because at some point we become fully convinced. So two things deepen our insight. One is contemplation. This takes the process deeper. All mystical traditions use contemplation. Christian, Sufi, everybody uses contemplation. Contemplation is also, in Buddhism, sometimes called analytical inquiry. Advaita just says inquiry. Other people say questioning things. Don't know mind. There's all these, descriptions of it, but basically, it is the ability to continue and deeply contemplate our situation in life. So we come back to it again and again to see it more deeply. I read the same things I've read 30 years ago, and I understand them more deeply when I read them. So it's not about understanding something intellectually. It's about broadening and deepening our understanding. We do that through contemplation. So contemplation really is a practice. Inquiry is a practice. We do it over and over and over again. We really cut through delusions on deeper and deeper levels until the delusions are cleared away. The other thing that helps deepen our experience and deepen our insight is making things important to us. If you make something important to you, then what happens is you're building your motivation. So we can build our motivation to be able to see these things by making it really important. How do we make something important? We make something important because we see the negative effects of not doing it and the positive effects of doing it. So with contemplation, the negative effects of not doing it are suffering. And the positive effects of doing it is increasing joy and love in our lives. So when we understand this, we can make it more important. And this gives us the energy and the determination to continue this depth of contemplation. One thing to understand, though, is that you can't really try to do this harder. Trying to do it harder is not a doing, it's a seeing. If you try to do something harder, it's almost like part of you is trying to beat up your other side of yourself and make it work harder. It's not like that. It's more about seeing something. How much energy does it take to shift your attention to something else? How much energy does it take to sit and meditate? How much energy does it take? The only energy that it seems to take is when we're resistant to it, when we're trying to fight with ourselves. That's where the loss of energy comes. So when we're trying to beat ourselves up or force ourselves to do this, that's where we really expend a lot of psychic energy. The other thing to understand about really bringing it down to realization is that we really are bypassing logic and other types of learning that we've had. We're really trying to see things freshly. And one thing about our conditioning is that it's very, very enamoring. We get enamored with it because it works on a practical level. But it doesn't work on the practical level of realizing ourselves. It gets in the way. So, our mind, our thoughts are a tool. And this tool is extremely useful. It's the most useful tool we have. The problem is that this tool conditions us. And so we get enamored with the tool, which is insane. We don't get enamored with our saw and our hammer. I mean, some people love to polish their tools or whatever, but, it's kind of, typically we use a tool, and once we're done with it, we put it down. Thought is different. Thought conditions us, so we're using it all day long. People think all day long for no reason at all. Interestingly, some people can have deep realizations with very little practice. And this is kind of amazing. I don't know if it's due to past lives or what. I mean, a lot of people say this, that people have had past lives where they've been deeply involved in practice. An example of it is Eckhart Tolle. He's just kind of this miserable, depressed person that all of a sudden had a deep insight and his life changed dramatically in one moment. He wasn't a meditator or anything like that that I know of. So we can have a deep realization at any time. That's why it's so important to inquire, because we don't know when there's going to be a breakthrough. We just really have no idea when that's going to happen. So I encourage people to deeply inquire right from the beginning. So when you're meditating, also inquire, use the teachings, inquire, watch videos like this. There are many, many people putting out these things these days. Um, whatever works for you. The other thing I think can be helpful in this situation is that we want to not be so enamored with thought. And the thing is, it's important to understand that no thought is true. Now, that sounds kind of radical, but it's true. No thought is true. And so if we say that a person has a blue blouse, well, this just points to something. It can point accurately or it can point inaccurately. So when it points accurately, we say the thought is true. But seeing the blue blouse directly verifies it. That's where the truth lies. The truth lies in direct experience. The truth doesn't lie in the words. The words are only true if they point accurately or if they describe accurately. But thought is one away from reality. It's secondary. It's not primary. Experience is primary. So we need to really question all our thoughts. If you understand the limitations of thoughts in telling us the truth, this can help us tremendously. And really what it does is that it helps us understand thought in general, and it also helps us gives us energy and awareness to question all our thinking. Because when we question our thinking, then we can make sure that we're not being conditioned by wrong ideas. A lot of people think and never look at the actual experience. Actually, you have to train yourself to look at the actual experience. A lot of times we're looking at an actual experience, and we're just looking at the thoughts we've been conditioned to have about it. For instance, our thoughts about the body. We may think the body is separate from the world around us. And yet, if you go into it without making those assumptions, because even the assumption is separate is a thought, it's a concept separate. So can we see the world before concepts? When we see the world before concepts, we see wholeness. We don't see separation. So this deep seeing directly becomes very important in seeing our true nature. Intellectual understanding can point to this, but it does not reveal it. It actually can conceal it. We really need to make sure that we don't get focused on the concepts or just accept the concepts, that we really go to direct seeing. And this becomes particularly true when we're really examining our true nature. Our true nature is the core of understanding. It's like finding God within us and seeing that we're the same. And this sounds a little crazy because the ego would take this and run with it and get all puffed up. But we're talking about something that's deep, deep understanding and is beyond the ego. So for instance, there's this thing, subject-object. We have an idea that we're here and things are over there. Those things over there are objects. But subject-object is an imposition of concepts on reality. Reality presents itself as a wholeness, and we break it down through our thinking, through naming subject, object, that, this, etc. So we're looking for pure subjectivity without an object, pure objectivity without a subject, or no subject object at all. We're looking beyond these concepts to immediate experience, awareness and perception, that wholeness directly. So, anyway, I hope these ideas are helpful in some way. You may want to just examine your experience and really, you know, try to motivate yourself to really do inquiry, because there are many ways of inquiring into our experience that just breaks it down so that we can no longer see the world in the same way. And when we do this, what happens is that we experience more and more freedom inside of ourselves, more and more peace inside of ourselves. So, this is the longing that we all want to find in our lives. So, we may think it comes through money, relationships, etc., but it really comes from finding our true nature. And the only way we can find our true nature is that we really have to um, see through our mistaken conceptions of life. So, thank you. And I'll put another one of these out next week.